Well, here we are at the end of this year-long exploration. So I am going to go over the binding and how I came to this idea. And so this first part is going to be in real time. When I was gearing up to do this project, I saw one of these being used online, and I instantly knew that this is the style of binding I wanted to use. So this is a 45 record album binder. Okay, and so it's a front cover that's scored, put in. There is a spine that comes in, and then a back cover. And I felt like if I got my hands on one, I could take the measurements from it and create kind of like a template. So I made measurements of all these pieces and wrote it all out, and then I converted it to be used for this project. And so between, also what you don't see in here, let me see if I can get it to where you can kind of see it, is that between these pages, and it's hard to see here, but there is a wedge in here. And the reason there is a wedge is because when you have empty pages such as these, there's not as much bulk to them, but when you start putting albums in there, it increases the width of each of these pages. So it's the same thing happens when you're adding lots of texture on mixed media. So, and because this is all about the texture, I felt like there needed to be wedges. So I went ahead and decided on what size I wanted to work on for the project, and I decided to go with a 6x6. So I simply added an additional inch on it on the page for my bind edge. So I do need to get these scored and then decide where my holes are going to be placed for the actual binding. So I created a spine that needs to be scored on this edge, so this goes with my stack of things I need to score. And I created a front cover with my score marked, and I'm gonna start with a corrugated cardboard for this. This is thick chipboard, but not corrugated. And then my back cover, so it'll be like this, also needs to be scored. And then here are all my wedges. They do not need scoring. So that's what I'm going to start off with, is I'm going to start with a stylus, my cutter without the blade, and I'm going to start scoring. Now this cardboard is pretty challenging to score, as you can imagine, so I'm doing the best I can, and then I'm going to do it on both sides to get a good line going so I can bend that over. Now there was some tearing, so you will see later on I do put some tape over that to protect that raw edge. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to give everything a good score, the spine, all my pages. I'm checking the width of my spine with the wedges in there. And truthfully, I'm thinking about that spine even at that point, that that just fit pages and wedges without any texture on it. And you'll see I do later on the line go in and fix that spine. So now I'm going in to apply my surface treatment to my covers, and I am using Plaster Cloth. This stuff, if you have never used this, I highly suggest it. I use a rigid wrap Plaster Cloth here, but you can use any brand. I do have a link to it in my own store. down in the description box. So I just cut those down to fit, remembering not to include it in my 1-inch bind area. That'll help reduce some of the bulk of this book. And I'm wetting it down briefly and then applying it to the front, giving it a rub. It's really smooth. You can see all the potential texture there, especially as I get to layering this thing up. Now you may notice I am going over the top, the bottom, and then on this front cover, the right side edge, so that it does lip over and include the inside part of that front cover. But I am not doing that on the left edge, my bound edge. And you'll see how I treat that as we go forward. Now I am going to set that aside, let it dry naturally, and do the same thing to the back cover. And now, while those are drying, I am going to go in and start to figure out where my holes need to go. And as you can see, I did not do my binding for this until I was completely done with the entire journal. I wanted to get a better idea of just how thick that was going to be and if I truly did need to make some adjustments to my spine, and I did. Now here I'm measuring. I measured twice before I did those holes, and I'm glad I did, because that second bottom hole would have been totally off. So I am going to punch holes in all of the pages and all of the wedges, the front cover and the back cover. Alright, here are the dried covers. Now you can see I added that tape, and this is the awesome stone face stencil by StencilGirl Stencils. Designer was Tina Walker. I fell in love with this when I first saw it, and I got the opportunity to see it a little early because I did happen to be in Vegas taking the Matter class with Tina Walker and Catron, and she had it there, and I fell in love with it. So I'm adding this to the cover with light and fluffy modeling paste. I was trying to think of the weight. I then went in and specifically added this heavy, super heavy white gesso to the cover, and I didn't add it really thick on the plaster cloth areas, but I did add it over the top of that light and fluffy. And then I'm coming in with my fluid acrylics in Deco Art by Deco Art. This is Payne's Gray. It is actually thicker than normal fluid acrylics, and it's more of a soft body, and I don't know if it's just because it's been sitting around for a while or what. But look at what that plaster craft does, or that plaster cloth does with that color added. My whole thought around the kind of the theme or the place that I was beginning with for this cover was what comes out of the mist, what comes out of that creative space that we've got going. And I just wanted it to really reflect that, and I really was like even rewatching what happens on the surface is just, it gets me all tingly, but it's gorgeous. Now what you haven't seen is that on the back cover I did also go in with some of that TCW light and fluffy in areas. So now when I'm adding the color to the back, you can really see where the plaster cloth is versus where the light and fluffy was. So I get that real ethereal, misty kind of look to it. It's kind of the same thing that happens when you add your gesso to watercolor paper, but not all of it. You kind of get that same look. So here I am going in, I'm letting those dry, or actually I guess I did this before because you can see the covers over there. But I am redoing my spine. I am increasing it by, I think the original spine was 3.5 inches, and I increased the spine to 6 inches in total. So a big difference. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm just creating that new spine. And now that I realize how thick this is going to be, and I am giving it a good score, and then I'm going to treat that just like I did my covers.
So you can learn to be kind.
Now here I am just checking that I got everything correct, my width, how big that spine is going to be, how much space that's going to give me. And you can see it's a pretty chunky one. And again, just going to go in and treat it just like my cover. I'm going to add that plaster cloth to that center area. I am going to overlap on the top and the bottom, but not on the right or the left, my binding edge.
Heavy artillery, oh, justice is my middle name. I'm Alice. Dear Queen of Hearts, I'ma grow you white roses, so you can learn to tell King of Hearts to Amelie's falls, so you can learn to be kind.
And now that that is good and dry, I'm going to go in with my Liquitex Super Heavy White Gesso, getting the same effect as I did on the cover and the back cover.
Dear Queen of Hearts, I'ma grow you white roses, so you can learn to be kind.
All right, now that the cover is done, I need to do my title page. So I have added some of the plaster cloth to that front title page, and now I'm going to go in with some acrylic paint.
Moon, I'm there soon. I'm leaving quite early tomorrow morning. Undercover, baby, is what you ask of me. Soon I'll be disguised. Shooting star, I'm without a safety net. Give me a ride, I'm going far beyond with.
And now now that I've got that paint laid down, I'm going to add my title. I'm doing that with some letter stickers. Stickers will not adhere to this plaster cloth, so I am using some fluid matte medium from my little bottle there to the stickers to get them to stick. And I believe I did end up going over them with some gel medium as well.
I'm on my way. Shooting star, I'm without a safety net. Give me a ride. I'm going far beyond where the sun sets. Shooting star, I'm without a safety net.
So initially I did try alternative hardware for this. I did try a ribbon through there. It just would not hold it securely. So it took me a while to find these 4-inch screw posts. And thankfully CFS Binds came to my rescue on that. So I used 2 of those, the wedges, and I set upon myself of getting this chunky boy bound. Now you're gonna see here I've had to do extra hole punching because those screw posts ended up being wider than I initially anticipated, so I did have to go through and do that. But look how chunky that thing is. I mean, it's definitely a good thing I went with a larger spine. But I'm just really pleased with it and how it turned out.
Shooting star,
Thank you so much for your patience as we work through this huge project. It has been quite the journey, that is for sure. But I appreciate all your views and comments and likes and subscribings. I am just very pleased with how this turned out and your response to it. Thank you.
debates to earn some tailwind. The years pass.